Hello BookTube! Today I want to film a video about the 8 series that I am interested in starting going forward. These are all within the fantasy genre. That's just the genre that I tend to read the most. Not to mention, it's much more common for fantasy books to be written in a series than necessarily other genres, maybe sci-fi a little bit, but fantasy with all of its like world building and characters and epicness often demands series where other narratives, can be covered within a single volume. So a lot of fantasy books are parts of series. The reason that I am so excited to make this video is because for the last year, I would not let myself start any new series. I had read the first or second book in about 8, 9, I don't even know how many series, and hadn't finished any of them. And so it was one of my goals to finish those series. I've done a pretty good job, and now I am finally allowing myself to start some new series. With that in mind, the first book I want to mention is a book that I had started, maybe 2 years ago, and just put down and never finished. So it is part of my list of series to finish, but I want to make sure that I get to it, and that is the Mistborn trilogy. This is the first book in that series, The Final Empire. There are more books within the Mistborn universe, but these are specifically a trilogy. I have the other 2 there. That's all I'm going to focus on for right now. Perhaps later I will continue on with the series, but this is my goal. I got to about here. So I met, all the characters, kind of lined everything up. I stopped at the part where it was a lot of like info dumping and world building. I guess I just, started reading other things, and like info dumping is one thing that I really don't like in a book. So it stalled me out, and then I never went back to it. But I do want to read this series, so Mistborn is very high on the top of the list. Another book that I have owned for quite a while, and I think I read maybe the first chapter a long, long time ago, is the first book in the Faseer trilogy, which is Assassin's Apprentice by Hobb. I think I bought this book because a long, long time ago, not that long ago, maybe like 5 or 6 years ago, I was just looking for some new fantasy, and I googled like must-read fantasy authors, and Hobb was like top of that list. And so I bought this book, and I'd heard lots of great things, especially about her character work. I don't really remember the tiny bit of this book that I read. I think the main character might be called like Fitz or Fritz or something like that, and I've heard that he is just delightful and a fun character, and that these books are just incredibly enjoyable, and I'm really looking forward to reading them. A couple of my favorite books that I read this year were Strange the Dreamer and Muse of Nightmare by Laini. I loved her writing. She has such a beautiful and lyrical style of writing. Her books are very atmospheric, and so without having to know anything else about them besides that she wrote them, I went and I bought her trilogy, Daughter of Smoke and Bone. So I have the other 2 books in this trilogy. Didn't need to know anything about them, just needed to know that Laini wrote them, and I trust her for the rest. She does write YA, so I think they're the only YA books on this list. So something, fun to dip my toes into. She does really cool world building. These covers are very interesting, so I'm intrigued, and I'm looking forward to reading anything else that Laini puts out. A book that I have mentioned before, specifically in my end of the year TBR, so books that I wanted to read before the end of the year, was The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. This is the first book in the King Killer Chronicles. And as I said in that video, I've owned this book for years. I kept not reading it, one, because I was in a reading slump for a long time, and it was big and a little intimidating. And then I didn't because of the fact that I wasn't reading any new series, and that this author has not released the next book in this series in years and years and years. So he's basically George R.R. Martining us, and I've been burnt in the past, and I didn't want to get my heart broken by him, but I'm gonna do it anyway. I figure it's not that big of a deal for me, maybe, where I do wait so long between reading books in the series, so who knows, maybe I'd read it and put it down and not even pick up the second one for a little while. So that was just an excuse, and I'm not making any more excuses. So of all the books on this list, this is the next one I will be reading. A book series that I've just heard amazing things about on BookTube is the Gentleman Bastards series. This is the first book, called The Lies of Locke Lamora. I know that it involves like a band of thieves, that it's very much like a found family narrative, morally gray characters, that there's supposed to be just incredible friendships in this book. I love the cover so much. I think this is just the most stunning cover I've maybe ever seen, and so I was like, I'm sold, I'll read it just for that. I don't know if where it is like a band of thieves, if it's a specific heist narrative, which I'm typically not a fan of. I know there's a heist in Mistborn, especially, or maybe only in the first book, but it's not a trope that I'm a big fan of, but I'm willing to give a chance for these characters and this cover, so I'm in. A book/series that I don't know a ton about is Jade City by Fonda Lee. I know there's some pretty typical fantasy elements in this, where, you know, there's like supernatural powers of some kind, like lots of like political intrigue, family being very important. At the top it says family is duty, magic is power, honor is everything. I think that could apply to a lot of fantasy narratives, but I've heard that it's really inventive and does a lot of different stuff as well, so I'm intrigued. I know that the next book is called Jade War, or maybe it's the third book, I'm not sure, but I have heard a lot of people on BookTube getting into like a lot of debates about how the story has progressed, and some people thinking, you know, that one is way better than the other. And I love a controversy. I love to weigh in on those kinds of things. So I want to read these books so that I can say, you know, what one I think is better, if I think that the plot developed the way that it should. So I just want to weigh in. Another series that I know literally nothing about is The City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. I don't know anything about this book, but so confident am I by what other people have said that I will like it, that I bought the second one on sale online without having owned or read the first one. Did not realize that the one I bought was actually the large print version, so it's really, really big. Oh well, I don't care. I will still be buying the first one so that I can get to that second one, but I'm confident. I am very confident that I will like this book. And finally, the last series that I would like to get to sometime soon is The Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. This past year I read all the books that are out so far in the ACOTAR series, so A Court of Thorns and Roses. I had a lot of fun reading them, especially since so many of my friends have read them, especially A Court of Silver Flames. I loved that one, though the plot was a little shaky, but the characters and romance were great. My sister owns all these books, all the Throne of Glass books. She's lent me the first 3, so I'm prepped and ready to go. I don't know how immediately I want to read them, but I do know that Sarah J. Maas is really good at writing accessible fantasy, so these are gonna be like my break in case of emergency books, you know, if I'm just not enjoying something that I'm reading, if I'm like having a hard time and I'm struggling getting through a book, I know I can pick up a Sarah J. Maas book and have a good time. A Court of Mist and Fury, I powered through in 48 hours. Like, I was just having a good time reading those books. And I know the Throne of Glass series was her first series, so I'm expecting them to be, you know, even more reader accessible and even more readable than the ACOTAR series. So I'm looking forward to those as well. If you've read any of these series and you know, if there's one that you think I should put higher on my list that I should get to first, please let me know. If you've read any of them and you don't like them, I would definitely like to know that. Or if you have any other series recommendations, I'm always open for that as well. I would also be interested to know if you recommend any series that don't fall within the fantasy genre. Because again, most of the non-fantasy books that I read, of which there are not that many, they're always standalones. So I haven't read a lot of books belonging to a series in other genres. So I'd be really interested in that.